everybody, and welcome to another video review brought to you by GreyElephant Gaming. My name is Tim Norris, aka GreyElephant, and today is a how-to-play video on Oz the card game. Keep in mind this is a demo copy and everything is subject to change. Without further ado, welcome to Oz. First, find your location cards in the game. Location cards are easy to identify. The back side will always have a map of Oz. And then the other side will have some location that is found in the land of Oz. Next, you'll take 6 of them, placing them in a row as such, face down. Next, each player should take one title card that has a Wonderful Wizard of Oz on one side and the End on the other. Keep it on the Wonderful Wizard of Oz and place one on each side of the board. Next, locate the story pack that consists of these green cards with the word Oz on the back of them. Deal each player 5 of them, and then take the rest and create a stack to the side of the board. This has now become your library. Next, go ahead and locate the 4 blue story dice. We're now ready to enter the world of Oz. Determine who is player 1. That player then would roll these 4 blue story dice, and for every X that appears, that gives you a story point. Story points are used for swapping out locations, drawing cards from the library, adding characters to the board, equipping them with objects, and all kinds of other things. So what we're going to do is we're going to walk you through all the available possible actions that you can use story points for. So the first thing we'll do is why don't we take a look at on how do you bring characters into the land of Oz. We've rolled 4 blue story points, and up here is the required amount of story points it takes for you to bring a character in. You know who characters are based off of this and their key phrase: character, 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 character. Ooh, event. That's a little different. Let's not go over that quite yet. We're talking about characters. So if you wanted to, he could spend one of his 4 story points to bring in the farmer's wife. They always start here to the left at your title card. And remember what the purpose of this game is. You're trying to take one of your characters, who is a prime character mind you, from your title card down to your opponent's title card, signifying the end. Why don't we look a little closer at this card real quick. So he spends 1 story point to bring the farmer's wife in. This number up here represents her vitality, or victory points, and also her ability to stay in play. This tells you she is a character, her classifications, but if you notice, minor. Prime. It takes a prime character to end the game. Only a prime character taken from your title card can step on to your opponent's title card to make the end game action occur. So in this case, she would not be able to do that. So she will stay in play in one of the 6 locations of Oz throughout the entire game. She also has some other text here that will give her possibility of more victory points or vitality that she could gain if she's at a red Oz location or even a farm. So 1 point was spent to bring her in, and we'll put that to the side to show that we still have 3 more points left to go. Well, if you notice here, we can also spend 3 more to bring in the Cowardly Lion. Wow, look at that vitality. We also know that he's an animal. But look at this. His vitality goes down if he's at the same location as other characters. That big chicken. Why don't we go ahead and put him at our title card as well. Player 1 has now spent all of his story points. The last thing he can do on his turn, before he passes the story dice, is he gets 1 free move action for each one of his characters. So if he decides, he could go ahead and move the Cowardly Lion up to this spot, flip over the location. Ah, the Clearwater Spring. And then if you notice down here, we have keywords signifying exactly what this means. And then also, humans and animals are vitality +1. So we know that if we put the Cowardly Lion there, he will gain a vitality. However, if we move the farmer's wife up there with him, he has now lost 3 vitality. And it is important to remember that, because depending on where your characters are and who's with them will determine the amount of vitality they have at the end of the game. And remember, whoever ends the game with the most vitality wins. Now that player 1 is spent all his story points and moved his characters, he should pass the dice to the other player across the board. Now this player could go ahead and roll them and try to generate story points of his own. However, before he does that, why don't we show you an action called Archive. Archiving means you go through your cards and you determine that you do not want one of the cards in your hand. And you're going to archive it, or discard it. And you are going to be able to roll one time an additional yellow story die. That didn't work out so well. We're going to pretend he got 3. And the reason is because we're going to bring in this King Crow. It costs 3 story points to bring him in. However, this is a flying creature. Now it's important to remember that he's a flying creature, because that means that locations cannot affect him when he's in the storyline. So he would start at the title card over there for player 2, and he can move him onto the first location here. Oh, we found the Tin Woodsman's Cottage. The Tin Woodsman's Cottage is the Tin Woodman himself would gain vitality +1 if he remained at this location. But if this was a negative effect that was down at the bottom of the card, it would not affect that King Crow because he flies. Now I think you have a pretty good understanding on how you bring characters into the game. We've showed you how you do archive cards. So why don't we go over a few other actions that you could perform on your turn. Why don't we go ahead and pass the dice back over to player 1. Player 1 then is going to see how many characters he has in play. Now, what I mean by in play is that he's got 2 characters and they're at one of the 6 locations here in the center. If the Cowardly Lion was still right there, he would not be considered in play. Only when you have them actually in one of the 6 locations. Because he's got 2 characters in play, he gains 2 extra gold story dice that he's going to be able to roll on his turn. Count up your story points and go from there. Now player 1 could decide that at any time that he doesn't like any of the face-up locations that are on the board. For 2 story points, you can remove a location from the storyline and take the top card from the stack of face down, and you can go ahead and put that in its place. However, in this case, that affected him negatively, and that would not have been a smart move. Let's take a look at some of the other cards that he has in his hand. This one's interesting. This is called an event. It costs 2 story points. Events can be played face down. So for instance, he could spend his 2 story points and decide to take this card and lay it down in front of him, and that card could then be played on his turn or even on his opponent's turn. In this case, the event is called Destruction of the Tin Woodman. Archive the Tin Woodman. So in other words, remove him from the storyline. So if he wanted to, he could play that card, leave it face down like that, and then at any time, even on his turn or his opponent's, he could flip it up and perform whatever action it says on the card. Then he can decide now, because he's now spent his 4 story points, he changed the location for 2, and he's played a face down event card for 2. Oh, player 2's worried about what that event card is. Now he can decide to, for a free action, move his characters 1 spot. He decides to move the Cowardly Lion up 1 area, exposing it. Aw, it's Glinda's palace. Notice here it says that if an evil character moves or is moved to this location, it is archived. Good red characters are vitality +1, and Glinda is an extra vitality +2. Well, she is a red character, but how do we know if she's good? At the top of the card, whenever they have the little green symbol up here, that means that they are good characters. So if you move her right to there, that would give her not only a bonus because she's in a red location that the farmer's wife gives her, but also because the location itself would give her a bonus. Now if you notice, the crow has a black symbol with looks like a pitchfork. That would signify he's evil. And then some characters will even be neutral. Neutral characters will have a gray symbol at the top of their card. Such as this. The flying monkeys are neutral. However, if the Wicked Witch ever comes into play, flying monkeys instantly become evil. Now that player 1's taken all his actions, he's going to pass over the story dice to player 2. Now player 2 will get an extra yellow die because he does have the King Crow in play. He could also archive cards to try to get more cards, or try to get more dice to roll for story points as well. So after player 2 rolls his dice, he then could look at his hand and he can decide to bring in characters. Wouldn't this be interesting? He brings in the Tin Woodsman. Now, the Tin Woodsman is not technically yet in play. So let's say that for his free moves, he moves the King Crow to here, exposing a new location, and then he brings in the Tin Woodsman and aha! Boom! You got him. The Tin Woodman would be instantly archived due to this event card. Take him and put him over into the archive pile or discard pile. There even is more powerful event cards, such as the Cyclone, that you could lay down in front of you. The Cyclone would allow you to swap the position of 2 target locations in your storyline. Characters at the target locations are sent back to their owner's hand. All other cards at the locations are archived. Keeping this face down in front of you and using it late game is very, very powerful. It's important to remember that some event cards can be played at any time too. So if you wanted to, I'll go look after the stock. Archive cards from the top of the library until you find a non-magical animal and play it in your title card for free. Here's a great example of a magical animal and a non-magical animal. Magical animals will have a green dot at the bottom of their card. Notice in the keyword it does say animal here. Whereas a non-magical animal will still say animal here at the keyword, but it's missing the green dot. So that card that you played the event would allow you to bring in the Queen of the Field Mice for free and put her on your title card. Why don't we take a look at objects? Objects are, tools, or in this case food, that can be attached to your characters to give them extra vitality. In this case, the food, the bread and butter, cost you 1 story point to bring into play. This would allow you to be equipped to a human to give him +1 vitality. It's important to remember that unless otherwise stated in the text, there can never be more than 1 object in play that is exactly similar to another. It's important too, when you're playing characters, to remember another rule. For instance, let's say that the Tin Woodsman was still in play over here. We didn't destroy him. However, let's say that player 1, in his hand, also had a Tin Woodsman card. If he brought this Tin Woodsman card into play at his title, you can only ever have 1 type of character. There can never be 2 Tin Woodsmen in play. Therefore, this one would be archived. Why don't we put a few more characters out here on the board real quick, and then what I'm going to do is I'm going to force an endgame situation and then give you an idea on how you would add up points. In this example, we are going to say that player 1 played Oz the Great and Terrible and finally moved him all through the 6 locations and got him to the title card of his opponent. You would then flip the title card over to signify the end. Player 2 would get 1 more entire turn, but we're going to say player 2 has already performed all his actions. And now we're going to go to the scoring phase of the game. Why don't we add up player 1's score first? The first thing that would happen is why don't we just take Oz and remove him from the game. Because he was a prime character and he did end the game, he is then removed and he will not count to the final score for player 1. From there, you're going to look at any location bonuses that it gives your character. For instance, the Tin Woodsman Cottage would give the Tin Woodman Vitality +1. Remember, Vitality is victory points. Because the Tin Woodsman ended the game there, that would instantly increase from 4 to 5. Then we would just look down here. Vitality is -1 at water. It is +1 at yellow Oz. Neither one of those have taken effect. He had a couple of objects attached to him. This oil can gave him Vitality +1. This axe gave him Vitality +2. That then would have given the Tin Woodsman 1 for the location, which makes this 5, 6, 7, 8 points for the Tin Woodsman. Each player would then go all the way down their line, and any location bonuses, they would attach them to their characters, and then the other player would do the same thing. Whoever ends the game with the most vitality wins the game. Thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed this video and it gave you a good understanding of how Oz the card game works. Now, if you want my opinion on this game, well, head over to the Grey Elephant quick video review. 5 minutes! My wife and I will sit down and we'll both give our opinions of what we think of this game. Now, if you want to see this game played in real time, well, go over and check out the Grey Elephant live play. You'll see my wife and I set the game up and go head to head through an entire game. Who wins at the end of that one? Now, after watching all 3 of these videos, if you like what you see, the only way this game can come to life is if you head over to Kickstarter and pledge. Thank you for watching. Bye-bye.